Young Aussies are struggling. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee and let's have a look at this article discussing young Aussies that have been left behind by the budget and that are on struggle street. Now I'm going to go in my old boomer mode. You know, you just got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make the best of the situation put in front of you. But let's have a look to see what they've got to say here. So, the budget has tax breaks for the wealthy and submarines, but not much for young people in financial distress. Well, okay. What? I mean, here's the thing. I suspect, and judging by the comments, people think that the budget would help them. It would save them. Really, you want to look at the budget to see how much they're taking off you. That's the approach you need to take. Okay? Yeah, when the government tells you they're going to give you things, chances are they're lying to you. It's just, you experience that, in life. Millions of young Aussies turned out to vote for Labour with a promise of a better future. Well, if you want a better future, it's up to you. That's all it really is. The only way politicians are going to help you get a better future is if you work your way into the political machinations and machine, or if you're a civil servant and can use that to influence your remuneration. Is this where we've gotten now? Is this the outcome of our schooling system? People have been so indoctrinated, they think the politicians are the ones that are going to give them a better future. And well, let's see. The promise has already been broken in the government in this week's federal budget. Despite the government's own Economic Inclusion Advisory Committee recommending an increase to support payments of 22%, which would have pushed youth allowance from approximately $563 to $684 a fortnight, Labour's budget committed to raising youth allowance by just $40 a fortnight or $2.80 a day. Yeah, that's $40 a fortnight. That's $20 a week extra money you get for doing the same thing. Can you complain? I mean, when I went to university, one of the great advantages I had was my degree was structured in such a way that you could study and work at the same time. So we'd be doing 4 days in an architectural practice, getting real-world experience, and 1 day at university from 8 to 8. They got rid of it all now. Apparently, they want to give more course flexibility, but I suspect it's to attract more international students because they were having trouble getting actual job placement. But there you go. The $2.80 won't even buy a loaf of bread. Well, you don't buy a loaf of bread every day. You buy one a week. This insulting increase will keep Australia's students in poverty. So what? Students aren't meant to be rich. You're getting money from the government to study. That's awesome. What's wrong with that? I always wondered, because I went to QUT where we had the flexible full-time workload. I always wondered how the UQers could afford to study architecture and not work, and it's because they're all getting youth allowance. So, okay. The government has made a choice in this budget to leave behind young Australians and other vulnerable communities for the sake of tax cuts that for the already wealthy and submarines that don't exist for 2 decades. This could be called comfort for the huge number of young people who are already struggling to live. Well, here's the thing with youth allowance. You're meant to supplement it with some work. You should be getting some part-time work while you're studying. Or is that not done anymore? Maybe there needs to be more structured courses to allow people to work and study. That creates opportunities for people who are from less wealthy families, so they can, the poorer kids, the normal kids, working class kids can get a university education. Or get a trade. Get a trade while you're at uni. Get a trade. We know that each day thousands of students are making the tough decisions to either show up to class or take a shift to keep the roof over their head. That's bullshit. They're not going to class, not because, we've got to work. They're not going to class because they were out partying, having too much fun, or they can watch it online. I mean, who wrote this? This is bullshit. Come on, Bailey. Come on, you know it. Oh, unless they've all gotten really well behaved since I went to uni. Students are being forced into extending their degrees just to put food on the table or graduate with lower educational outcome. That's life. Okay, you're happy that we even got the opportunities to get the education that we can here in Australia. If you have to extend it, do it. Who cares? What's an extra year? It's nothing. In the grand scheme of things, it means nothing. If you are getting better results, if you can afford to support yourself while you're doing it, it is a completely acceptable and reasonable outcome. So students are facing poverty. The National Union of Students, in partnership with Foundation for Young Australians, recently released a report into student poverty in Australia. This is the thing, because we were working in our profession while we were studying, we were flat out. Because you'd be a student, you'd be running projects, working on things, you'd be really busy and in a practice. It was a fantastic experience. But we didn't have time for any of this bullshit, any of the student unions and protests and all that stuff. I remember we started a club, and what we did is we wanted to provide additional education for our fellow students because they weren't teaching us how to use any of the software or the skills that we needed to use to actually get through our course. So we just started up a club. We had to join the union for that and use the computer labs to run it on the weekend. We'd come and I'd teach ArchiCAD, someone else would teach Rhino, someone would teach, we'd teach them EndNotes for referencing. And kids would pay $5 to $10, depending on how long the class was. Then we used the money at the end of the year to run an exhibition and put on so much booze. You're probably not allowed to do that anymore. Oh boy, the world's gotten so PC, isn't it? Anyway, more than 70% of those surveyed said the intersecting crisis of high rent costs, casual work, cost of living pressures made it very difficult for students to study full-time and find enough work to financially support themselves. And yet with this budget, the government has chosen once again to keep young Australians receiving youth allowance well below the poverty line. While we welcome a 15% increase to rent assistance, this will leave students with only $31 extra a fortnight towards rent and no better off than they were a year ago in the face of escalating rental costs. House data shows that in the 12 months to April, rent prices for a Sydney unit in Sydney or Melbourne have increased by almost 25%. HECS rise will only make things worse. I'm deeply concerned by the budget's failure to address the issue of student debt or respond to calls to freeze HECS indexation. A 7.1%, the HECS indexation rate continues to burden young Australians and exacerbate the student debt crisis. The total value of HECS loans will increase by $4.5 billion on July 1, with the average debt projected to increase by $1,700. Young Australians will likely be one of the most indebted generations in history, and it is unacceptable that the government will make more profit this year from student loan system than they will from their changes to the petroleum resource rent tax. I mean, that's stupid, making this comparison. It's indexed. You get your degrees paid for. You can pay your degrees up front, then you don't have to worry about the indexation. But there you go. I mean, back during Whitlam's days, they made education completely free for everyone, university education. So you're having a whole lot of people now who went through back then, got all their uni for free. It's such bullshit. They got cheap houses and free uni. And it actually made no difference at all to the demographics who were going to university. It just meant all the politicians and wealthy people, their kids got to go to uni for free. It made no difference. So then they did the HECS system where you have to contribute to your education. You're not funding the full costs. Ask your international mate how much they're paying. They're getting ripped off, really, for what they get often. So maybe we should just make university education completely free for all Australians. Maybe for certain degrees. What do you reckon, guys? Just fire a bunch of the admin staff at unis. That's how they'll recover the cost. Labor's refusal to meaningfully raise youth allowance or rent assistance, temporarily freeze HECS indexation, or take any real steps to support struggling young Australians is a direct attack on the nation's future. This budget reveals a government in denial about why it was elected and by whom. After an election campaign full of slogans, the radio silence towards young Australians in this budget is deafening. For young people, the promise of a better future has been replaced by the cold reality of escalating economic inequality. Congratulations, you've learnt why people grow out of voting for Labor. Right here. We voted for a government that would invest in Australia's young people. Yet we've been thrown crumbs. Once again, it's the young Australians who've been left to pay the price. Okay. Well, let's have a bit of a talk about this one, guys. I can't say that I'm at all surprised. I think this is just people growing into reality and maturing that a lot of the political sloganeering is meaningless. And if you're ideologically possessed, like a lot of young people are, that they'll just blindly become rust-on left-wing voters, they don't give a shit about you. They don't need to. They don't need to appeal to you. You're not important. You need to use your preferences and vote strategically. Maybe get a few crazy minor party candidates up in there to really shake it up. Flip a few Labour seats with some nutty libertarians or One Nation people in there. Wouldn't that make it interesting? That would make them change their policies. A lot more than this. They're throwing you some crumbs. They don't care about you. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. How did you manage while you were a student? Did you use the youth allowance and work? Are these just a bunch of whinging young people? Probably all the ones doing, in the student union, doing the arts degrees that are going to end up being HR or, diversity officers working for government, getting paid $300,000 a year. Awesome future we have. Take care, guys. Check out HeiseBim or Heise Does. And if you're a fan and want to support us, you can on YouTube or Patreon. Use our referral links, buy our pocket squares, or call us if you need an architect. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.